Is the spiritual life a life of challenge or a life of simplicity? The answer is challenge. And today we're going to see an example of escalating challenge for the people of Israel in Joshua chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. This is Eric Slay with the UWM Penn Guy, and this is the Bible commentary. As always, if you like what you're seeing, I'd ask that you hit like and subscribe in order to help the channel grow. And now, without further ado, let's get into the Word. So today we're continuing to look at an introduction to Joshua chapter 9, 1. Last time we looked at this initial setup from the side of God's enemies, of the Canaanites. This time, we're going to look at it from the side of God's chosen people, the Israelites. And we're going to see how the life of faith is indeed a life of challenge. So let's once again read the verses. As soon as all the kings who were beyond the Jordan, in the hill country and in the lowland, all along the coast of the Great Sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites heard of this, they gathered together as one to fight against Joshua and Israel. Last time we looked at this from the Canaanite side and how futile it is to scheme and gather and plot against the Lord. This time we're going to look at it from Israel's side. And a phrase I heard in a sermon that's very true is that the promised land can oftentimes be the problem land. Indeed, Israel spent 5 chapters worth of time being prepared and consecrated and gathering themselves together to fight the war of the Lord. Then they attacked Jericho. The walls of Jericho came tumbling down, as the song goes, and they immediately collapsed at Ai. But then they recovered again under God, and God gave them the city of Ai, and another smashing victory, if a rather different one in the way it played out this time. And now again, we're going to hit a problem. We're going to hit a test. It'll be a different kind of test from the test that they passed through in the conquest of Ai, but a serious test nonetheless. And so here we see that this initial setup brings the array of problems, so to speak, all the problems at the same time. It does remind one of how God will allow a great storm, so to speak, or a great coalescence of difficulties in your life to come together all at once. Everything, it seems, that the devil, the flesh, and the world can throw against you. And so this isn't unusual to go from high to low to high to low to high to low. And we see a perfect picture of this in the much more famous story of Jesus calming the sea, where all of a sudden everything, and I'll put up a bit of it here, everything was basically against the apostles. They were sinking. They were on the verge of dying in this massive hurricane-level storm. And we see in the case of the New Testament example a very clear-cut, very straightforward sort of solution. Jesus is sleeping. They try to just wake him up. When he wakes up, he just says, "Quiet. Shh. Be calm." And the water is calm. And then, interestingly enough, the apostles are terrified. They're not terrified of the storm. They're terrified of Jesus, because this is God and the power of God on display. This is what separated the Red Sea. This is what brought down the walls of Jericho. Poured out fire from heaven. God poured fire from heaven out of God on Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is the power they're experiencing. And the Israelites likewise have experienced this power twice now. 3 times if you count the parting of the Jordan. 4 if you look at the fact that many of them had parents who experienced the parting of the Red Sea. But in any case, it's a good example that though Christians, we walk by faith and not by sight, that James also says we all stumble in many ways. And so it's never at all guaranteed that the spiritual life will be easy. It will actually be difficult. There will be storms. There will be coalitions of enemies. That everything may seem to fall apart all at once. The good news, though, is that if you know God, and if you love God, and if you're, as Romans says, all things work together for the good, for those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. So if you have not yet manifested that you are the called according to God's purpose by faith in Christ, then I would encourage you to do that today so that you can have strength in the trials and storms of life. And this is Eric Slawick, UW Penn, and this has been the Bible Commentary.